Okay, before we get into great guitar tone, the question needs to be asked, what is tone? Well, you probably already know that sound is just variations in air pressure. Kind of like when you drop a pebble into a still pond. The ripples emanate out in all directions. Now, if you had a pure sine wave tone, then it would look like this on an oscilloscope. Now, a sine wave oscillating at exactly 440 times a second, we perceive that as an A on the musical scale. But if all musical instruments created just sine waves for their pitch, we would have a very, very boring musical life. I mean, listen to all these different musical instruments all making the same note. The reason that each instrument sounds different is that while they're all playing that fundamental A, that 440 times a second, they also have other parts of their instrument either highlighting or cancelling out a number of overtones and harmonics just above that fundamental. In a stringed instrument like this, it is not only just the single back and forth of that A there, 440 times a second, it's the multiples of those frequencies that string also vibrates, and the vibrations in sympathy of the body, the neck, and all the other hardware on that particular guitar. Now, let's go and see the exactly what happens to the vibrations of a string, and we'll look at the open A of your guitar. Now, disclaimer here, I might get a little geeky in this section, but I think it's super interesting about all the math that is around us musically and how it comes into play when you plug in a nice juicy overdrive in your guitar chain. The math is really, really interesting. If you hate the math, I don't know, you can fast forward this section here, but I think it will really open your eyes about how tones are made. It's super interesting. Here's a side view of a guitar with 3 pickups, a bridge, and a nut comprising the full length of the playable string. So if we were to play an open A on a guitar, you might know that the fundamental of an open A is 110 Hertz. It would sound something like this. We call that 110 Hertz because the fundamental is moving back. That string is vibrating back and forth 110 times a second. This is called a closed or fixed boundary wave. The 2 ends of the string are fixed at the bridge and the nut. These spots are called nodes. Nothing is moving at a node. The area that's moving the most, which is right in the middle, is called an antinode, and this whole waveform is called a standing wave. But here's the thing, there are other vibrations happening along this string at the same time. The second harmonic has another node right in the middle of the string. Remember, we have nodes at the bridge and the nut, but we've added a third node right in the middle of the string. Now, what's right dead center of the string length? What do you think it is? You bet it's the 12th fret, that little area where you have those 2 dots on most guitar necks. It's a special part of the neck which is exactly half the distance from the bridge to the nut. So this second harmonic is 2 times the frequency of the fundamental. In this case, that would be 220 Hertz. And here's where it gets interesting. If you've ever rested your finger over the 12th fret, don't push it down on the fretboard, but just rest it over there. Here's what it sounds like. And you can hear that's an octave higher, but do you ever wonder why that sounds that way? Well, think about it. If you rest your finger directly over the 12th fret, you are completely deadening the antinode of the fundamental, but you're allowing that second harmonic to ring out because you're resting your finger on a node right in the middle of the string. That's why it's 220 Hertz, and it's effectively muting the fundamental because your finger is kind of putting a wet blanket at the antinode of the fundamental. Let's move on to the next one, which would be the third. And in this one, we've divided our string length into thirds. We've added another node, right? We have our note at the bridge and the nut, but we've added 2 more for a total of 4 notes. And guess where that lands? Right on your 7th fret. So if you rest over the 7th fret, it'll sound like this, which is an octave and kind of a half, which is a fifth. I won't go into the maths right now, but that is now allowing, well, actually it's not allowing the fundamental to move, it's not allowing the second, but it's allowing the third harmonic to happily move around because you're placing your finger right over that node, and those antinodes on that third harmonic, they're ringing out fine. They are not on the fundamental and the second one. And then if we go on to the 4th harmonic, that is dividing your string length into quarters. And guess what would happen there? That would go up. If you doubled and then redouble again, that would be 2 octaves, right? So if you place your finger right over that 5th fret, just rest it on there, that is double. That has gone up 2 octaves. Again, the fundamental is muted, the second is muted, the third is muted, because you're basically putting a wet blanket over all of those harmonics, but the 4th one in this case is ringing out. And then of course there's 5th, 6th, 7th, and it goes on and on from there.